Good morning. It's so good to be with you this morning. It's so good for us to be together. Whether you are here in person or watching at home, it's good to be together. As we gather together this morning, let me share with you words from Reverend Scott Taylor. We gather as a house of stories. As we learn from those who have gone before, the way in front of us becomes clearer. As we weave together our individual tales into a common story, our loneliness lessens, and the ever-present web of our oneness is revealed. As we listen deeply to each other's difficult stories with tenderness and trust, we descend into the longings and learnings, hopes and fears of the humanity we share. Beneath the wells from which we drink, there is a deeper well that feeds them all. Come, let us tell each other stories of our thirst. Let us drink from the stories that sustain us all. Come, let us worship together.
Are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from?
The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. Will those of you here in person please stand as you are able for our chalice lighting? If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with us at this time. And please read along with me, the words on the screen. As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. For those of you already standing, I invite you to remain standing for our opening hymn, and that hymn is number 341, We Gather Together. Good morning. My name is Warren Keys, and I'm glad to serve this morning as part of your worship team and also to serve as a member of your board of directors. Whether you're a first-time visitor or a long-time member, I offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your own religious journey, you are certainly welcome here. This morning, Will Smith, one of our lay ministers, will be available in the front right corner of the sanctuary after the service to talk with anyone who might be experiencing any difficult circumstances in their lives and would like to talk to someone. I hope all of you will read through the chalice that you were emailed on Friday about everything happening around here at UUFR, or you can navigate to the upcoming events section of our website. At this time, our nominating committee would like to share with us an important announcement.
Is Danny here? There she is. Good morning. The nominating committee is very pleased to present the following candidates for the ministerial search team: Laura Dupre, Becky Elliott, Bill McMillan, Chris Olson, Sandy Pierce, Ted Spencer, and Jim Van Kirk. This slate will be officially voted on at the congregational meeting in June, after which the search process will commence. Yep, that's a few months away, but in the meantime, there will soon be a page on our website where you'll be able to learn more about these candidates and to find out more about the process of selecting a new minister. We wish to thank everyone in the congregation who took the time to make thoughtful nominations, and especially all the nominees who were willing to take on the heavy responsibility of selecting our new minister. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our in-person social hour this morning will be downstairs in Founders Hall, where I'll be available to chat with you about the board or talk to you about any concerns you may have, or you can just say hello. But at this moment, I invite you to meet and greet your neighbors. Did I hear that your dad is having some
He's got Alzheimer's and he's been on hospice for a while. He's starting to lose the ability to.
I invite you to come back together. Continue those conversations at coffee hour. This is the time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows of our community. We do this because we believe a joy shared is a joy made greater, and a sorrow shared is made easier to bear. As we hold these shared joys and sorrows in our hearts and reflect on the joys and sorrows, fears and hopes in our own lives, let's be Let's just be with each other. As I share that Deborah Gray shares that her grandchildren lost their beloved grandpa, John Rowe, on Tuesday. First Class Officer Max Gillick was critically injured while attempting to save John. May we hold the Rowe and Gillick families in our hearts. Eli Rayfield is mourning the loss of his uncle, Danny Rayfield, who passed away on January 24th. Ed Erickson shares his sorrow at the passing of his beloved soul companion, Moni, after months of suffering from canine lymphoma. William Devereaux is joyful that the UUFR met our blood donation goal this week. As we reflect on these shared joys and sorrows in our hearts and reflect on the joys and sorrows, fears and hopes of our own lives, let's be together in stillness and in silence, opening ourselves up to that spirit within us and amidst us, called by many names but known to every human heart, that leads us to a fuller, deeper, richer experience of life. After the silence, we'll sing together hymn 123, Spirit of Life. But for now, let's just be together in stillness and in silence.
Good morning again. Everything we do here at UUFR is only possible because of generous financial support provided by so many of us here. For those of you who have set up automated giving to UUFR who send in a check by mail every month, I'd like to thank you now for your generosity. If you would like to make a contribution in person this morning, we invite you to bring it forward and put it in one of our offering plates. If you would prefer to have an usher come to you, just raise your hand. Or you may use one of the giving methods that you'll find on our screen. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received. is a blog post from Ozan Verrill, and it's called How Invisible Stories Hold You Back. October in London doesn't exactly scream sunshine. It was cold, gray, and rainy, the kind of weather that makes most people stay in and curl up in a blanket, under a blanket, that is. But no one in London seemed to care. People were out in droves. Crowds gathered outside pubs, pint glasses in hand. Restaurants were packed, and even the outdoor patios. People huddled under umbrellas or heaters, but were still out there, fully alive. That made me think about the stories we tell ourselves and how powerful they are. People aren't born hating the rain. To a kid, rain isn't a problem, it's an opportunity. They stomp in puddles, smear mud on their hands, and laugh through the mess. But after hearing, "You can't go out, it's raining," or "Get out of the mud," enough times from adults, they start to believe it. Rain is gross. Stay inside. Once that belief takes root, it's no longer just raining outside, it's raining inside your head, too. What happens if we rewrite that story? What if instead of saying, "It's raining, you better stay in," we say, "What a beautiful rainy day. Let's go outside and have some fun." This just isn't a hollow affirmation. It's about experimenting with a different story, putting on a coat, stepping out into the drizzle, and just seeing what happens. You might discover you love the sound of the rain hitting the leaves, or the way everything smells richer, like the whole world just got a reset. And it's not just about the rain. We have stories we live by that aren't fixed truths. They were just old scripts we've been following without realizing it. If you tell yourself travel is exhausting, you'll notice only the hassles, the delayed flights, the cramped seats, and miss the little joys along the way. If you tell yourself you're awkward in social settings, you'll tense up before conversations even begin, missing moments that could have been easy and fun. The point isn't to force yourself to love every rainy day or magically turn into an extrovert. It's about creating space to question the stories you've been living by and experiment with something new. You're not committing to something forever. You're just saying, what if? When you play with these stories you've been telling yourself, you realize they're just that, stories. And if you don't like the story, you can change the story. Now, don't change everything all at once. Just crack the door open. Put on a raincoat. Step outside. See what the world feels like when the rain has just fallen. See what you feel like. The rain isn't going anywhere, but maybe that old story is. And who knows? You just might find yourself outside, pint in hand, loving every drop.
Maybe love is all anybody ever should believe in. Maybe life is just something that employs us till we die. Maybe all we know is that the sun will come up every morning. Maybe time can choose whether to be earthbound or to fly. Everybody thinks they got it down. I won't worry. The truth's always been found in your life story. life story. Gather up your telegrams, your faded pictures, best laid plans, books and postcards, 45s, every sunset in the sky. Carry with you maps and strings, flashlights, friends who make you sing, stars to help you find your place, music, hope, and amazing grace. Maybe what we leave is nothing but a tangled little mystery. Maybe what we take is nothing that has ever had a name. Maybe love will fade like the parchment pages of our history. Maybe life is made of flickers of some brilliant burnished flame. Everybody's waiting for a sign. I won't worry, I think we'll be just fine in your life story. It's your life story and my life story. This is our life story in your life story.
Thank you so much, musicians. Let's give them some more appreciation. I was in the middle of Virginia when I first heard the Mary Chapin Carpenter song that we just enjoyed, Your Life Story, it's called. When I heard the song, I was on my way to find a place to live here in Raleigh, and I was struck with how relevant it was to my own process of moving from one place to another. Mary sings of how we are more than a collection of our experiences and our memories. Storytelling mentor Brandon Teague writes, "Your identity is your life story. Understanding and constructing one's own identity provides purpose and meaning to one's life. As a life story is constructed from chosen memories, so too is identity constructed from the meanings one associates those memories with. This is called meaning making." I love this reframing of identity as rather than something static and unchanging, as something that changes over time as our environments change, as our roles change, as our bodies change. As I sorted through the things in my house, part of the decision-making process for what to keep and what to leave behind was reflecting on who I am and who I want to be. As I decided to leave books about the plants of the Pacific Northwest behind, I reflected how I will carry with me knowledge and love of plants, and realized that while I once dreamed of being an amateur botanist in Oregon, I now have other dreams. Looking at the rustic dining room table that was the first thing purchased for my house 15 years ago, I remembered all the loved ones who have eaten, talked, and played games on that table. I left that table behind to make room for my work as assistant minister here at the UU Fellowship of Raleigh, and my desire to simplify and downsize my life. With every change in life, we take some things forward, we leave some behind. As we live our lives, we have specific points in time that we remember vividly. When we recall these moments, we feel strong emotions, and we remember details about how our lives were at that very moment. These moments could be times of transition, times of awe, times we feel love or loss or both, times that were well planned or entirely spontaneous. These self-defining memories are the plot points in our life stories. How we integrate symbols and messages, lessons learned, themes and meaning to these pivotal moments inform how we make sense of the present moment, how we look forward and hope for the future. The power of these self-defining moments are in the telling and the retelling of the stories. So now, if you are brave, I invite us to feel the power of storytelling by turning to our neighbors and sharing with each other the story of one of our self-defining moments. And if you're really brave, you can find someone other than the person you came with. But no pressure, no pressure. If you can't think a moment of your life to talk about, just describe something in the room. Or if you're feeling shy, just think about one of the moments from your life. We'll each have a couple of minutes to tell our stories, and I'll watch the time. If you haven't switched now would be a good time to wrap things up. I'll give you another moment to wrap things up. Thank you for being brave. Let's come back together. Welcome back. I'd like to just take a moment to reflect on what you all just felt right now. Why did you choose the story that you did? Did you tell the story for the first time? Or have you told the story before? If you told the story before, did you tell it differently today than you have in the past? How did it feel to tell your story? How did it feel to listen to your partner's story? Do you feel differently now than you did before you shared your stories? We, as humans, have the ability to learn and to make meaning of our thoughts and experiences. We are also able to learn and make meaning from the thoughts and experiences of others. How do we do this? Through story. Before humans started writing things down, knowledge was passed from generation to generation through oral tradition, through stories. And somewhere along our evolution as humans, our brains became wired for stories. What makes stories so powerful is our ability to identify with the characters in the story. Neurologists believe that humans and other animals have what they call mirror neurons. We use these mirror neurons when we ourselves live our lives and collect experiences. These mirror neurons are also used when we watch others living their lives and collecting experiences. They allow us to mirror the activities of others as if we ourselves were the one doing those activities. Mirror neurons allow us to ascribe emotions and motives to the activities of others. They could even be the basis for why we feel empathy for others, how we learn to care about others. It is thought that these mirror neurons are also activated through stories. Think about it for a second. What makes a good story? I don't know about you, but the ones where I care about the characters, the ones in which I can identify with the characters, are the ones I most remember. Another aspect of how our brains are wired for stories is in how they help us remember information. When I was taught the system used to classify different forms of life, I was taught the mnemonic sentence. Maybe you have your own for this. King Philip came over from Greece Sunday. That helped me remember kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The mnemonic sentence created a narrative that made it easier to associate similar words with each of the words of the narrative. Stories can cause chemical changes in our brains as well. A good story can increase the levels of the neurotransmitter dopamine, which can aid, coincidentally, the formation and retrieval of memories. Stories help us remember things. Humans evolved in communities. It was safer that way. Easier to defend against predators, easier to protect babies and young children who are born more dependent on parental care than other animals. It was more efficient to share tasks essential to survival, such as hunting, foraging, and food preparation. And while our own experiences are very helpful in learning how best to do things, it's also very helpful to learn from others. We learn from others by watching what they do. And we learn from others when they share stories of their experiences with us. Stories are adaptive. They help us to survive. Today we learn from reading books or magazines or the internet, but back before humans learned to write, we learned from storytelling. If my uncle died from eating purple berries, I would learn about it from stories. If there were special ways to grow beans, I would learn it from stories. If there were ways my community governed itself or acted with each other, we would learn it from stories. For stories don't just help me know who I am and how I can survive. Stories tell us how we should act with others and also how we should see the world. Creation stories are a perfect example of how stories can color how we see the world and the universe around us. Take the creation story from the Jewish Torah. When God began to create heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night, and there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, that it may separate water from water." God made the expanse, and it separated the water which was below the expanse from the water which was above the expanse, and it was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. God said, "Let the water below the sky be gathered into one area, that the dry land may appear," and it was so. God called the dry land earth, and called the gathering of the waters seas. And God thought it was pretty cool. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, seed-bearing plants, fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, seed-bearing plants of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with a seed in it. And God said, "Yeah, well done." And there was evening, and there was morning, a third day. God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate day from night. They shall serve as signs for the set times, the days and the years. And so they shall serve as lights in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth," and it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to dominate the day and the lesser light to dominate the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the sky to shine upon the earth, to dominate the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. Only a couple more days to go. God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures and birds that fly above the earth and across the expanse of the sky." God created the great sea monsters and all the living creatures of every kind that creep, which the waters brought forth in swarms, and all the winged birds of every kind. And God saw it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fertile and increase, fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, a fifth day. God said, "Let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature, cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts of every kind." And it was so. God made wild beasts of every kind, and cattle of every kind, and all kinds of creeping things on the earth. And God saw that those critters were pretty cool. And God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all the creeping things that creep on earth." And God created humankind in the divine image, creating it in the image of God, creating them male and female. Now, there's a lot more to this story, but we'll leave the story here for now. Now, I'd like to share a synopsis of a Native American creation story written by Potawatomi writer Robin Wall Kimmerer. A pregnant woman fell from a hole in the sky world. During her long fall, she held a bundle tightly in her hand. Below her, she saw only dark water. But in that water, there were many animals looking up at the beam of light coming from above, and a small dot that grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And they eventually saw that this dot was a woman falling from the sky at a very fast pace. So the birds got together and they created a net in which to catch the sky woman, and they brought her slowly down to the water and held her up in the water. But the birds knew they could not hold sky woman up in the water forever. So the animals called a meeting, and they decided what to do. The turtle offered for the woman to rest on their back, which she gratefully accepted. The animals knew that Sky Woman would need some more land to live on, and the animals had heard that there was mud at the bottom of the water, yet none had seen it. But the diving animals, the loon, the otter, the beaver, the sturgeon, they went down into the water trying to find the mud, but they all failed in their attempts. Muskrat then tried. Muskrat was gone for a very long time, and the animals feared for Muskrat's safety. Muskrat's body did eventually rise up to the surface, and in his limp body, in his hand was a handful of mud. They had not died in vain. The animals put the mud on top of Turtle's back, and Sky Woman danced on it in thanksgiving. As she danced, the mud spread out onto land enough for her to live on. And the bundle Sky Woman had in her hand held seeds in which she planted. On the land, with the water and the light from above, the plants grew and provided food for the animals. They called this new world Turtle Island. And there's a lot more to that story too, but we'll leave it there for now. So I'd like to just compare and contrast the underlying meaning present in each of these stories. There's a lot of meaning, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of things. In the first story, there is a powerful being we call God who decides to create the world as we know it. Each element of this new world is created systematically, step by step, according to what God deems good. God creates plants and sea animals, land animals, and then creates humans, a man and a woman, in God's own likeness. And in this translation of the story, the humans are set to rule over the whole world and the creatures upon it. In the second story, a woman falls for no apparent reason from a world in the sky onto a water world already populated with many animals. The animals see her coming. They protect her fall, and make sure she has somewhere to live, even at the cost of one of their lives. The animals work together. They make joint decisions. Sky Woman is welcomed as one of them, and they share their gifts with one another. If we grow up with the first story, we might see the world as hierarchical. With the second story, we might see the world as cooperative. Now, I'm not saying that one of these creation stories is better than the other one, from an entertainment view or from a moral view. Both stories were voluntarily shared with me, the first by inclusion in a set of scriptures that informed the religion in which I was raised. The second was shared in a much more artistic form than I wrote, in a book written by a person whose culture was informed by the story she shared with all readers. The point I want to make is that stories are very good at helping us act as part of the culture in which these stories are told. It does not help us, however, if we accept the values represented in these stories without examination, or when we accept our stories as the right way and the stories of all other cultures as the wrong way. The reading about rain we heard earlier shows an example of invisible stories we've been told, but that we don't have to accept as fact. With any story, whether they're our own stories or the stories from our cultures, we benefit from re-examining them to decide whether those stories are still true for us. Who's telling the story? Why might they be telling the story? What is the meaning of the story to you? Who else might have a different story to tell? Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, in her transformational TED Talk called Dangers of a Single Story, she shares stories of her upbringing in Nigeria, where the books she had to read were all written by Europeans. And the stories she wrote were of people doing things they would do in Europe. When she moved to the US for university, friends and professors assumed they know who she was based on stories they'd heard about Africans. She says, the single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. If you were able to hear a meaningful moment story from your neighbor, think about how that story might expand your own story of what is true. Think about your own story of a meaningful moment. And how that story has changed what is true. Every story has the potential to change our own stories, whether we tell the story or whether we're told the story. This spring, our congregation will be reading the UUA Common Read book together, which is called Authentic Selves, and is a compilation of life stories and portraits of trans and non-binary people and people who love them. In these times, we are being told a single set of stories to believe. But we as Unitarian Universalists know that there are many stories and many truths. Now, more than ever, may we share our own stories of what is true. May we listen to the stories of those who are often silenced. And may we share our own stories with one another that we may have a deeper understanding of the world around us. May it be so. And now I invite you to stand as you are able for our closing hymn. Our closing hymn this morning is hymn 128, For All That Is Our Life. Please be seated. As we end this time of worship together, I would like to share words from Reverend Vanessa Southern. May the stories we tell name the largest truths of what was, of what is, and pull us forward to what should be, as stories were always meant to do. And in the spirit of words spoken on Inauguration Day by the Right Reverend Marianne Edgar Buddy, may we have the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and the God of our understanding for the good of all people, the good of all people in this nation and in the world. Amen.